Two destroyers locked in a dangerous dance near Scarborough Shoal. One slip, and 96 U.S. missiles could change the map of Asia. But instead of unleashing its firepower, the USS Higgins chose the unthinkable: restraint. Why? Because this clash wasn't just about ships and sailors. It was about $3.5 trillion in yearly trade, the credibility of America's alliances, and whether global rules still hold against aggression. This isn't just another patrol. It's a glimpse into how the next world order might be decided without a single shot fired. Let's unpack what really happened. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Imagine standing on the deck of a U.S. destroyer as radar screens flicker, with blips closing in fast, every second shrinking the margin for choice. That was the scene as the USS Higgins made its slow but steady patrol near Scarborough Shoal, a routine demonstration of freedom of navigation that suddenly turned into something far more dangerous. The destroyer traced its path along the contested waters, disciplined and deliberate, but the calm of the ocean gave no sign of what was about to unfold. On the horizon, Chinese combat vessels loomed, first as shadows, then as gray outlines, and finally as aggressive silhouettes pressing nearer with each passing minute. The Chinese Navy responded with muscle. A pair of Type 052D destroyers and several 054A frigates advanced toward the Higgins, maneuvering not for careful coordination, but for intimidation. The distance shrank to less than 500 yards, close enough for sailors to see faces across the decks, close enough for the sound of engines carrying over the water. For ships bristling with firepower, that is no longer normal defense posture. It is brinkmanship, a test carried out steel against steel. The air between them was heavy not with gunfire, but with the possibility of it. Then came the maneuver that pushed tension to the edge. One of the Chinese frigates cut sharply across the bow of the Higgins, slicing dangerously within 300 yards. In maritime standards, that closing speed and distance is not seen as bold but reckless. At that range, neither ship has time to recover if a mechanical error, a miscalculation, or a sudden swerve occurs. Both crews trained for combat understood this point clearly. Aggression in peacetime seas had just edged into a rehearsal for war. The speakers on board carried more than static. A blunt voice cut through the airwaves. "U.S. warship, you are in Chinese waters. Leave immediately or face consequences." For sailors on deck, those words meant more than a legal dispute. They meant someone on the other side was prepared for confrontation. The message wasn't only directed at the Higgins, it was theater for the region, demanding international acceptance of a claim that most of the world denies. The claim itself stands on shaky ground. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and affirmed by a 2016 tribunal, China's sweeping assertions over Scarborough Shoal carry no legal recognition. Yet, verdicts and laws exist on paper, while ships clash on open water. Beijing continues to plant its flag not by treaty, but by patrol, pressing its advantage in physical presence. The Higgins patrol was not simply a cruise for show. It was a statement that international law still matters, even when challenged by proximity and force. Think of what one wrong touch of steel could trigger. At those distances, a scrape of hulls could become an international nightmare. The chain reaction moves faster than decisions can be made. First a collision, then defensive postures, then radar screens lighting up, then missiles screaming skyward, every weapon standing by, every calculation balancing risk against duty, all dependent on discipline. And while warships faced off, civilian lives floated nearby in small fishing boats. Filipino fishermen trawled for catch under the shadow of warships, already pressured by Chinese Coast Guard cutters that frequently chased them from traditional grounds. For them, the military display wasn't a game of diplomacy. It was a direct barrier between their boats and the ocean that feeds their families. Now you understand the measure of risk compressed into less than 500 yards, with threats echoing across the water. So, why would nations push into such danger over a reef barely visible at high tide? The answer extends far beyond its shallow waters into the arteries of world trade and the economic lifelines of nations. Every year, more than $3.5 trillion worth of cargo flows through the South China Sea. These aren't abstract figures. They represent the tankers fueling Asian economies, the container ships carrying electronics, machines, and food, and the bulk carriers transporting raw materials that keep factories alive. Over 60,000 merchant vessels navigate these waters annually, each one a moving piece of the global economy. When you look at shipping charts, the lanes cut tight lines past contested shoals and islands, Scarborough among the most crucial. Control of that point doesn't just mean putting a flag in the water. It means being able to watch, threaten, or even disrupt the arteries that keep international markets beating. Oil magnifies the importance. Around 15 million barrels per day, nearly a third of all oil shipped by sea, transit these routes. Much of it heads north toward Japan and South Korea, nations with large populations but little domestic energy. Cut those flows and their industries grind down. America, too, has deep interests here, not only because it trades through the same waters, but also because stability in Asia underpins the US-led global order. Any blockade or interruption near Scarborough Shoal would ripple outward in rising energy prices, broken supply chains, and worldwide economic shock. Now, layer in the alliance system. The Philippines is not a silent neighbor at Scarborough, it is a treaty ally of the United States. When Chinese vessels encircle Filipino fishermen, Washington faces a direct test of credibility. If America looks away, every ally in the Pacific wonders whether U.S. promises are weightless. If it reacts with force, it risks the spiral of escalation. Each patrol by American warships is therefore not a simple exercise, but a signal to allies. The treaty stands, and intimidation will not go unanswered. Manila watches closely, but so do Tokyo, Seoul, and Canberra. Perception is part of this contest. Inside China, state-run media frame encounters like Scarborough as triumphs of resolve. Narratives highlight Chinese vessels outmaneuvering intruders, broadcasting the image of a nation no longer willing to bow. For Beijing, presence is power, and projecting strength reinforces both domestic confidence and regional claims. Across the Pacific, the U.S. projects a different kind of strength. Calm, deliberate, visible, but restrained. Sending a destroyer like the Higgins shows America present without being reckless. The message is that law, not intimidation, dictates legitimacy. The stakes for the Higgins on that day went far beyond saving face. With its vertical launch systems and advanced sensors, the destroyer had every tool to respond decisively. Its SPY-1D radar tracked the congested sea picture in remarkable detail, following civilian freighters, patrol boats, and hostile warships all at once. At the push of a button, weapons could have locked targets, preparing to unleash tomahawks or anti-ship missiles. But the crew held discipline. Radars tracked, but no weapons locked. Guns remained silent even with opponents less than half a kilometer away. That calculation, respond but not provoke, carried more weight than an exchange of fire ever would. This difference in behavior tells its own story. China relies on intimidation, sending ships so close that a scrape could ignite conflict. The United States relies on control under pressure, signaling that credibility comes from steady behavior, not from desperate shows of aggression. And it was in this contrast, restraint against provocation, that the Scarborough encounter revealed far more than a clash at sea. It showed the world two competing models of power, one pushing with risk and the other anchoring with stability. The Scarborough standoff ended without a missile fired, yet the message carried more weight than combat ever could. In a sea bristling with warships and weapons, the strongest act was restraint. The Higgins tracked every target but never crossed the line into escalation. Peace survives when those with power resist being pulled into chaos. It's a lesson in discipline, the kind that prevents sparks from igniting conflicts across entire regions. Do you believe true strength lies in holding fire when challenged? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns of moments shaping the world order.